Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. This is episode number 288, and I'm your host, Eric Worrell. And today we are going to be talking about 8 kitchen trends to avoid, according to real estate agents. I'll be honest, there was a couple in here that makes me feel pretty dated myself, but I thought it'd be a helpful one for all you landlords out there who are gobbling up real estate and thinking about updating the kitchens. We're going to talk about some of these trends that they're saying that you should avoid if that is you in that situation. So we're going to get to that right after this.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
So today's featured article, news story here, comes from Jennifer Billick. And it is posted yesterday, which would have been December 2nd as of recording this, on apartmenttherapy.com. Again, the title is 8 Kitchen Trends to Avoid According to Real Estate Agents. So this was a tough article for me to read because apparently I'm not very trendy, but we'll go through these one at a time here. And the first one that got me is Granite Countertops. That's right. It's saying that granite, once the gold standard of kitchen countertops is out. Paul Chastain, a Keller Williams real estate agent based in Walnut Creek, California, says marble, wood, and concrete are better options right now. They think that, TV shows are a big influence on that, who have pushed those products. And it said the various granites that were hot in the early 2000s definitely date a home now. Well, that's fantastic, because I did put granite into my home kitchen when we bought it about, it's probably about 3-4 years now. So that's cool. And I do know somebody who does the, the concrete countertops. And those you can actually get for a lot cheaper. They just kind of build them like regular concrete. They run rebarb through them, and then they can do all sorts of things with patterns and designs to make it look like anything you want pretty much. So if there's somebody in your market who does that, maybe if you got a pretty nice rental that deserves something beyond, your standard linoleum countertop, that's something to look at. When I was updating my property, rental property, it would have been crazy to put, granite countertops or even, concrete and having somebody install them. You go to Home Depot in the back of the store, a lot of times they got those like laminate, I think I said linoleum earlier, I apologize. Not much sleep these days with a newborn, but there's these laminate countertops in the back that really look kind of like marble or granite countertops. I was shocked at how cheap they are. You could probably get a decent sized kitchen, under $200 for your counters. The only pain in the butt part is they can break easily. Especially where you put the sink in, it gets pretty weak at that point. So you want to make sure they're secured properly. And then you gotta like iron on these end caps to them, because it's just like a fiber board that you would see. So they make these end caps that perfectly fit it. And I found the process of ironing those on to be a little bit of a pain. And one of them seemed like no matter how much I ironed it on, I couldn't get it. But luckily it was where the stove was. So the stove kind of like pinched it naturally shut. So it kind of was able to seal up a little bit better. But that's something to think about. Again, go to Home Depot or Lowe's, usually at the back of the store. They got, they come in 8, 10, 12-foot pieces, all sorts of styles that you can do. And they're so cheap if you're looking for just kind of a minor upgrade. Again, if you're updating a rental property, sometimes you're not really worried about trends per se, because you're not really looking at a granite countertop budget unless you got a really nice rental property, which from the sounds of it, most people in our community and audience not renting out granite countertop type properties because you're buying something that's affordable. So take this all with a grain of salt. So that was the first kick to the shin, with granite countertops. Number 2, traditional wood grain cabinets. Stay away from the standard wood grain cabinets in both style and size. The realtor says, if you ask me, that was never really in style. He said also to avoid cherry-colored cabinets because they look dated. This made me laugh because I have granite countertops in my kitchen, and I also have custom cherry cabinets. My father makes cabinets and asked me what I wanted, and I said, you know what, let's go with a dark wood stained cherry. So that's what I've got. So I'm 0 for 2 so far as trends to avoid when it comes to your kitchen. Luckily, my wife and I will be staying there for a long time, most likely. So not really worried about the resale value anytime soon. But it is funny when you do something, you're like, this looks really nice. And then somebody else is going to buy it in 30, 40 years and be like, oh, why did they do that? So avoid the traditional wood grains. I agree with that, though. When you kind of go into a place and it's kind of got that maple wood grain color, I do feel like you're like, okay, we're looking at like mid 90s maybe, I agree that kind of gives it a dated look. So this article, for the third trend to avoid, it's talking about open shelving. It says that right now it's a gamble. Arlene Quirk, a realtor with Keller Williams in Pennsylvania, says it's absolutely on trend, is eclipsing the desire for closed cabinets, but she doesn't think they'll have staying power. Many homeowners that see it in the new construction question how to use it long term. Cabinets with doors hide a multitude of sins. I think any trend that's not really practical, it probably doesn't have staying power. It might look cool. It might, have a few years of shelf life. Hey, maybe our editor could throw in a drum, joke drum in there or something like that. Thanks, Luca. But I think the open shelving concept, like just from a practicality standpoint, it's I don't want to sit there and arrange all my plates so they look perfect on the wall kind of thing. I know if I look at especially my coffee mugs, that's kind of a mess that I like to hide. That's I guess to each their own on that one though. The next point here, I think we're on point 4, is closed off kitchens. It's saying, which I don't know, that's not really a trend to avoid. I don't know how many people are like actively like closing off kitchens, like, oh, this kitchen's too open, I need to close it off, But it is worth discussing because right now, probably the biggest trend of any is open space, right? Everyone talks about looking at the open space in here and natural light and those kinds of things. But it is saying that they do believe that open floor plans are going to continue into the future. Which is kind of weird. I don't know if maybe in the past that wasn't an option. Like they were worried about the walls coming in or something. But it does seem kind of weird that everything was so closed off in the past. But that might have lined up better with the dad comes home, you don't talk to him, you get him a beer or something, kind of Days of Old or something like that. I don't know. I'm picturing maybe like a old King of the Hill or something like that. And you don't want the distractions and be able to see your family and interact with them. I don't know. Who knows? But all right. So I got one. I don't have open shelving, and I also don't have a closed off kitchen. So I'm not completely dated. But then I come right back to earth in this next one. Dark paint and wood. You can accomplish that flow from kitchen to the rest of the house with light paint and wood colors. So I thought this makes a good point. I said that there is a move to darker paint and wood colors, which I mentioned earlier. I did like a really dark cherry stain, like a mix between an espresso stain and something else. I don't remember off the top of my head. I like it. I think it looks nice, but it says that you have to be careful because a good color is a function of space, size, and light. You need a large kitchen or lots of light to get away with dark colors. Dark spaces are still the detractor of value. So that's a good point because in my kitchen, not a lot of natural light coming directly in the kitchen. It kind of comes from the adjacent room because it is opened. But that's probably something to consider. And I'm sure you've heard that before. I know I have. The smaller the space, the lighter the color. Where if you have a small space and you paint the walls dark, it's just going to make that space seem even smaller. If you have a really small space, just a little pro tip here, put mirrors on every wall. And then, the room's infinite in size and you could probably list it, when you go to sell for, 50,000 square feet because of all the mirrors on the walls. Just something to consider. I don't know if you want to, do it, but if you do try that out, let me know how it goes. Next tip here, DIY backsplashes in cabinets. All right. So I failed this one really good. It says, we know it saves money and allows for endless creative expression, but kitchen DIYs, they're a no-go. That includes everything from backsplashes to painted cabinets. Just don't do it. I don't know. I love the generalities that are online or in opinion pieces, right? Where it's just like, don't do it. I'm like, I personally did my own backsplash, and I think it turned out fantastic. I really like it. Every time I look at it, I go, I really like how that backsplash turned out. And I've done a couple before, so maybe I worked out some of the rookie mistakes. But like I mentioned too, my father built the kitchen cabinets that I have he chopped down trees. He built his own dehumidifier. He planed down the wood, everything. So the cabinets in my house are from trees that were on the property that I grew up on. So I kind of got an emotional attachment to them, but I think they look nice. But there are aspects of them, I suppose, that are not ideal. So another buyer might come in and be like, why are these doors so thick and heavy? Or, it just doesn't feel like other kitchens. But I'm planning on when I sell someday that, you get that kind of like want to be different buyer still. And they're like, oh my gosh, these cabinets are so unique. But who knows? But it's saying don't do DIY, right? So that is probably not going to go over well with a lot of people in this audience who do the DIY. If it's a rental property, I think a lot of people, you got to do DIY unless you've hit that, critical mass where you've got enough properties under your belt and you can afford to get a crew in there and do things. If it's your first, second, third, fourth, fifth property, like there's a good chance you're in there swinging hammers and doing your thing. Watch the YouTube video, make sure you're doing things the best you can. Live with the fact that it may not be perfect because it's not what you do for a living. And then, move on and go to the next. I did the backsplash in my rental property and sold the property a few months later. They raved about the kitchen. They thought it looked great. I really looked at the backsplash and I thought it looked amateurish. So I guess the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But keep that in mind. All right. Do we got any more on here? I'm kind of losing track. Oh, yes. Ornate anything. It says simple and chic are in. Plain styles are back. That means avoid anything that doesn't have clean lines or can come across as ornate, like intricate pull or handle pulls, decorative wood, oddly shaped islands, and styled cabinet and drawer fronts. I think that kind of goes without saying that anytime you do anything ornate, it's going to have a lower livelihood for it to be kind of in trend, right? If you do something that's, really outside of the norm, it's very unlikely that somebody's going to look at it in 5-10 years and think that it's, trendy. But I guess that's kind of up to your perception of what ornate actually means. And then the last point here is talking about mismatched styles. Porter says that if the kitchen doesn't match the rest of the house, it's a deal breaker. So skip the shabby chic. I don't know why I keep trying to say chick. It's chic. Oh boy, I need to get some more sleep, people. I'll tell you, holding a newborn at 3:45 a.m. this morning did not help my reading comprehension. But enough excuses aside, it says that that's a deal breaker. So it says mismatched flea market style if the rest of your home skews mid-century modern. So I got to say, I feel this one pretty good too. But maybe you've had this experience like I've had. The issue that I'm running into is you have these certain rooms, and I call them scabs. The reason I call these rooms scabs it's just like picking a scab. And like you pick at it and you maybe you just wanted that little piece of that scab that was kind of already flaking off. And then as you're picking at it, you're like, I gotta just keep picking, and you pick the whole thing. Well, there's certain rooms in your house sometimes where you're like, well, I'd love to change the trim on the floor there. But if I update that, then it's not going to match those windows and their trim. And then at least in my case, the room that actually connects with the kitchen, I have these, like, they're not gorgeous, right? They're old. They're probably 30 years old easily, but they're these big windows that show the whole backyard. So I'm guessing if I got it professionally installed, I would be looking like $10,000 just to replace these windows, to be honest. So it's not on my short to-do list here. But I've thought that I don't like in this room the way that the trim is old, but I'm like, if I redid the trim, I'd have to redo the windows. And if I redid the windows, like, I don't think it would actually go with the paint color I like in here and the lights. And you kind of start picking at the scab, and before you know it, you got to redo the whole room. So I definitely have 2 rooms in my house right now that come to mind that kind of have mismatched styles from the rest of the house because I'm like afraid to pick the scab, so to speak. So I'm sure you can relate to that, because if I am jealous of people who like buy a house and just like hammer it, right? They just get it so it's like as close to perfect as possible. And you walk through and you're like, wow, this is like meticulously well done. Because I feel like mine's always got the little things where I'm like, yeah, but I don't feel like updating those windows just yet. So you're kind of dealing with that stuff. But there is something to be said for the hedonic treadmill. Maybe I'm going to screw this up because I'm doing this from memory, but I had a friend forward this to me, and basically the idea of the hedonic treadmill is that like you get on this treadmill and you buy something and you get that little dopamine rush because you bought something new, and then it kind of goes away, and then you buy another thing and you buy another thing and you buy another thing kind of thing. And from doing that, you're always just kind of chasing the next thing that you're going to buy. You're on this treadmill of, just purchasing. Well, I feel like sometimes, that can be a good thing, right? And if you're doing it in terms of your home, I'm getting that little bit of dopamine every 3 to 6 months when I do a new project because I'm slowly fixing it up and making it ours. And if I just did it all right away, it would just be done. And I wouldn't, get that little bump, And this is my long-winded way of, letting my beautiful wife know that I'm doing this for us. I'm doing this for us. I don't want to just take it all right away and, not have these little, wins along the line in the future. And really, it's very courteous of me to do that. And I feel like that's really just shows how sweet I am as a person. So that's what I've got to say about that. So all sarcasm aside, hopefully you guys were not as offended by today's topic as I was, because I found out that I am going to be very dated very soon. But so is life, right? Things happen. You move on. All right, guys. Speaking of moving on, that's the end of today's podcast. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving last week. Depending on when you're listening to this, who knows? It could be the middle of summer. But I've got some holidays coming up. I know you're going to be getting busy, being on the road and whatnot. And safe travels as you're working through this festive time of year. All right, guys. Have a great week and take care.